Today's topic of discussion is Saffron Socialist and Spirit, India's Path Forward. Now, a lot of discourses are going on around India's ideological, social, and economic future or its direction. These debates are often conflicting and sometimes emotional. All of these conflicts are stem from our competing understand of our past, means India's past. Broadly, two major political currents shape this time. One is a broad socialist politics that speaks through various movements in the language of social justice and equality. Second is saffronization or Hindutva, which follows a right-wing ethno-national political ideology. Our discussion focuses on India's path forward at this critical point where these two currents collide and intersect. I would like to ask my first question to Dr. Vundru. You are a renowned Ambedkar scholar. At the time of India's independence, Nehruvian socialism and Ambedkarite social justice existed as two distinct political ways. Today, amid the surge of saffronization, these two traditions are overlapping, I think. For example, India's left increasingly embraces Nehruvian socialism to defend the saffronization. Other political parties or political ideologies are trying to imbibe the ideology of this socialist ideology. Another thing, a new paradigm is evolving. Saffron socialism. UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath's one of the biographies title is Yogi Adityanath, The Rise of a Saffron Socialist. This has produced a peculiar and often chaotic ideologic situation. My particular question is, historically, how Nehruvian socialism and Ambedkarite social justice, these two streams differ. Another question, adding to this, where might they converge in India's path forward, and such a convergence is possible? If possible, what would its likely or how did it impact? I raise this question because in this context, there's a Sangh Parivar's attempts to appropriate Ambedkar's politics. This is the context I am asking this question to you.
Thank you, Mathrubhumi. Thank you, Cissy, and thank you, panelists. And thank you for all of you who gathered here. A very interesting topic, very apt for the day and for the times. I would also like to look at this through a constitutional prism, or the way we brought in our constitution. So when you're talking about Nehruvian socialism or Ambedkarite social justice, actually these boil down to the same when you look at the constitution. I'll like to bring a very interesting example. When we were going with the making of the constitution, it will be very astounding and unbelievable to know that it was at the fag end of the Constituent Assembly, fag end of the making of the Constitution, that they brought in the universal franchise. even the right to vote, even broadly agreed upon, even by Gandhi or Nehru or even Patel, the kind of conflict we went through while even to bring in franchise, universal adult franchise, was a little opposition by the princely states. So Ambedkar and Gandhi were at the midst of it. Even earlier, when they were on a conflict, they were broadly agreeing upon. It came up to Nehru and Ambedkar to really push universal franchise as a voting right, as a legal right, not as a constitutional right. Even today, we don't have right to vote as a fundamental right. There were factors like Patel tried to say, okay, let us wait and wait for some time before bringing it. Why I am giving this example is Nehruvian and Ambedkarite streams of thought converged as we progress. Even the Hindu Code Bill, which it was actually pushed by Nehru, and Ambedkar took it up and took it ahead. For whatever reason, it stopped. Today, the idea of Nehru and Ambedkar, for example, on the Hindu Code, is today, it evolved and eventually we are there. The preamble, if I take it so, as the objectives resolution at the beginning of the Constitution, is a Nehruvian idea, and the preamble is further refined and pushed by Ambedkar. And the direct principles of state policy is a core socialistic idea of our Constitution. Why historians talk about socialism as a Nehruvian socialism? Because Nehru was at the helm of the affairs. For 17 years he was the prime minister, and here is a constitution, there is a country which is poor, which is trying to grow as a nation. And then, of course, if you are the prime minister of the time and we have brand new constitution with a core socialism in the midst of it, you will invariably bring out that socialism. So the way Nehru evolved or took ahead the socialist path, that is why we are calling it socialist path. But I would look at it, as you said, it is basically a convergence. When we talk about social justice, we are looking at Article 15 and 16 and the further aspects of looking at emancipation of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. So even the constitution is a social justice constitution for us. So these streams, as you said, certainly merge into a confluence today. Now when you look at the other ideology, if any ideology, whatever the ideology is, if it is in conflict with the Constitution, if any religion is in conflict with the Constitution, the conflict is emerging, it is evolving. So eventually, as you said, somebody is writing a book and has to use the word socialism, we have to go into socialism. Socialism, I'll give you a best example today. I was reading, I'm looking at a news today, the menstrual hygiene was brought into as under Article 21 because our Constitution provides for it. And the Supreme Court has given a beautiful judgment on it, making it a fundamental right. So the way we have expanded Article 21, the way we have evolved ahead, is we are a purely and very clearly a socialist country. If any ideology comes in conflict with the core socialist idea, the socialism is going to go ahead and win over the day. That is what we are going to evaluate. But when an ideology comes in conflict, when there is a conflict, and there will be multiple voices. So that is what we are seeing. You'd like to stop? I'll like to stop here. Any other further questions are coming? Thank you.
Next question is to Ms. Vineeta. Saffron politics is attempting something new, as what would I say is a new approach, bringing together political currents that once as dichotomies. For example, drawing to Ambedkar, claiming Gandhi. Saffron politics tries to bring core issues of raised by all these political streams under one ideology, umbrella of nationalist ideology. How possible it is, or how desirable?
Okay, thank you, Cissy, and thank you, Mathrubhumi, for having here, and thank you to all the audience here. First of all, I think saffron, since it's a literature festival, so the meaning of saffron, everyone knows, it's about restraint, it's about, morality, constitutional morality, as Sir just mentioned. And we have saffron on our Indian flag also, one of the core principles of our, the flag itself is about, saffron is a core a component there, which talks about courage, moral responsibility, and fearlessness, in doing whatever we do. And it's also about ethical delivery. So that's the principle of today's governance, I would say. So nationalism, yes, everybody is a nationalist here. We all belong to one country. So in that sense, yes, nationalism is it's not a practical or a plausible goal, but it is there. It's prevalent in every one of us. We don't belong to a different country. From Kerala, we belong to India. So I think that Indianness is something that the current order of the day is bringing out in every citizen. And it's the most inclusive governance, I would say, to that extent, in that it's making every citizen feel belong to India. Of course, we have our Mathrubhumi, which is Kerala or whichever motherland everyone belongs to, but we have Rashtrabhumi, which is India. So that is what the ethos of nationalism, as such as you say. But there's nothing called saffron politics, I would say, because saffronism is something which is very pure, which is very holy. It is about restraint. It's about restraint in power. It's about moral responsibility. And it's also about constitutional propriety. So I think that ethos is reflected in every aspect of today's governance, So there is no juncture, or there's no place where we have actually, where the governance of the day has moved beyond constitutional propriety or, challenged the tenets of the constitution, so to speak. So in that sense, yes. And also, when you talk about saffronism, Swami Vivekananda, if you know all the example of Swami Vivekananda before us, he talked of Daridra Narayana, which is seeing the, divine in the poorest, of the last man standing in the queue. So that's when it collapses the wall between saffronism and socialism. So saffron politics, I wouldn't agree with both together. But yes, saffron is an important component of our national ethos. And saffron should be seen not as a religious sentiment, but more as ethical governance and ethical delivery and restraint from absolute power. That is the concept of saffron, so to speak. So to put the context right, yeah.
Your point is clear. Mr. Yadav, as we all know, there is a big debate these days about Nehruvian ideology. I'll ask one question about it, related to social justice also. But if we look back, Congress, leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru and Rajiv Gandhi, were skeptical about caste-based reservation. In contrast, today Rahul Gandhi is campaigning for caste-based census and reservation. It's in line with what Ambedkar once advocated. Rahul Gandhi's slogan, "Jitni abadi utni hak," as much population, as much rights, captures this new push. My question is, of course, the ruling party calling this ideology as divisive. My question is, how do you interpret this change in Congress?
Thank you, Cissy. Thank you, Mathrubhumi. I am honored to share the stage with distinguished panelists. Thank you, audience. Often, people see parties as a static monolith. and the voice of the leaders as the final word. What Nehru tried to did initially was prevent society's division on caste lines. And that is why he was a bit skeptical, but we should not forget that he was the one who allowed Kaka Kalekar Commission, where we got to know that social divisions are based, backwardness is based on caste. He also encouraged, after multiple consultations, that we have to endorse caste-based reservation. We should not forget that Constitution was amended to allow states to have representation for the backward and oppressed castes. So any country can't be run by a frozen doctrine. It can't be run by what our leaders said in past. We have to evolve with changing times, changing realities, changing aspirations, and changing anxieties of people. I believe when structures of injustice change, we have to change our tools of justice also. And in any republic, in any living republic, we have to see what changing times need. And I think biggest tenet of any democratic system, any republic, is transparency. And caste census is one attempt to see the realities, and it is, I'll just, as Sir cited something recent, I'll also cite something recent about the UGC Equal Opportunity Center, what happened in Delhi, what happened all over the India. The attempt was to ensure that marginalized groups are not oppressed by the Savarnas. And all across the country there was protest against this. And I don't understand why, because if you're trying to prevent injustice, why would somebody wants to do injustice? And protest for that. Protest to do injustice. And I'm sorry, and I can, be in trouble by saying this, but I'll say this, and I'll take courage from my fellow Genuite. The Supreme Court stayed it. And we have been saying this from very beginning, that we have to have changes in our courts. We have to have more representation in our courts. And we knew this from the very beginning, that it will be stayed in the court because we have no voices in court. And that is one issue. Today, Rahul Gandhi is trying to narrow that gap, is trying to address this issue, and is raising voice that after the caste-based census, he'll put forward the inequality in this country. We'll have the data, we'll have the empirical evidence that this is what the Indian resources distribution look like. And I think there is no harm in recognizing and then redistributing. What so far in past until today is happening, that we are more focused on redistribution than recognition. And this caste-based census, our demand is to recognize the gaps, is to recognize the injustice, and with the help of data, with the help of new tools and new mechanisms, to address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yadav. As you mentioned the UGC regulations, I would like to ask one question to Mr. Vundru related to this. While considering the case regarding these regulations, the Chief Justice of India asked, quote in court, after whatever we have gained in the past 75 years towards forging casteless society, are we going for a regressive policy now? This remark recalled me an incident in which one of our former Chief Justice was insulted on the basis of caste. Has India achieved anything so far on its journey towards casteless society? Do you think it will ever be possible?
Very serious question. Very apt and important. First of all, on the UGC regulations. Actually, UGC regulations existed in 2012. In fact, we were all in Government of India at that time when this draft came. The regulations were very important because the systemic discrimination existed in some manner or the other, primarily for, it was a gender-based discrimination. And also the complaints of people belonging to, students belonging to marginalized communities came in. But after the Rohit Vemula incident, it has been very pronounced, and lot of unfortunate incidents happened where students committed suicide, lost their lives. There was a thorough committee that was established to look into the All India Medical Institute of Delhi, and he told me that the kind of differentiation that happened was very astounding. That was actually the beginning of it. Now, coming to the draft, coming to the guidelines, they have improved the 2012 guidelines. The guidelines are good to that extent. They don't discriminate the perpetrator. That means a scheduled caste professor can be punished if he or she is found to be discriminating against any of these categories. The regulations have two definitions. One, broadly on discrimination. Second, one on caste-based discrimination. Because based on the evidence over the years, it was felt by the government that, like Payal Tadvi or Rohit Vemula, a lot of students later on, that people belong to certain communities are more vulnerable. So the Supreme Court might, of course, what I believe, would have a look at it, and the regulations are only state. They will go ahead. Maybe they might need a little refinement if the court thinks so. But they are here to stay, and they are very important regulation. Now I'll come to another aspect of the legislation called the Rohit Vemula bill that has been introduced in Karnataka legislature. The difference between these regulations and the bill in Karnataka is that the Karnataka bill talks about criminalization of discrimination. So it is for the first time in the country, a legislature is looking at, because discrimination becomes a very subtle aspect. Very subtle. Sometimes the victim might be feeling it a bit. The perpetrator may not think that, he or she is discriminating. So we are at the cusp of this evolution. We will end up having criminalization of discrimination in higher educational institutions. It will be very interesting to look at it, because in our constitution, the articles, say 14, 15, they never talk about criminalization. The only country which has criminalization of discrimination is South Africa. There is an act called Equality Act and Prohibition of Discrimination, and there are equality courts which they can punish you for discrimination. So maybe as a country, we were evolving towards that. When you ask me about annihilation of caste, a casteless society, it's a very difficult question. We all want it, but till the time we carry our caste surnames, I think it's difficult. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vundru. One more question related to Congress's policies towards social justice, to you, Mr. Yadav. Rahul Gandhi is making significant political efforts to generate new energy in India against saffronization, like Bharat Jodo Yatra, for example. Yet, the Congress has struggled to make an impact on electoral politics. My question is the problem that this campaign focused on social justice has failed to connect with India's youth, or have young people has been drawn to the ruling party's narrative of strong India, that is economically, culturally, and spiritually empowered? What do you think about this?
I think at times what in our country, the issue is that many social movements have failed to transform into political movements, if we look in the past. But because we are the political party, we have to deliver in terms of electoral victories. Mr. Gandhi's campaign so far largely talked about the anxieties of Indian middle class, Indian poor, young students, gig workers, women, and other sections of society. But electoral victories are not just won on these issues only. Unfortunately, we have to look at not just the issues we are raising, but the communication of mediums which are there in public. I'll give you a few anecdotes from the 24 election. All the speeches and rallies of Mr. Gandhi were covered by a black screen, and it was written restricted on YouTube. There were age restrictions. Now there is evidence now that social media companies were told that that Congress content has to be pushed back. This is in 24 election. There were attempts that if our pamphlets were going, Election Commission of Indian people were stopping our trucks, our delivery people. So it's not just about what issues we are raising. We are raising the right issue. We are talking about the anxieties of people. But unfortunately, the communication of mediums are in control of the ruling regime. And if you look at the kind of content which is promoted, which is pushed, is more emotive, is more divisive, is more polarized. And unfortunately, this system, this mechanism, this government is hell-bent on destroying institutions, destroying anything which can lead to free and fair election. And I believe in any democratic system, the basic tenets of democracy is free and fair election, is transparency. And this government is hell-bent on destroying those. You look at service from Chandigarh, and I have to give the example of Chandigarh mayor election. What happened there? We have seen live that ballots were defaced. We have seen now there is evidence that electoral bonds were used to only support one party. And what happened to RTI? They have diluted it. Why? Is transparency bad in democracy? Let me ask this audience. Is it bad? Do you want more transparent government? Or do you want government which is hiding behind a veil and doing whatever they please? Don't we need answers? As citizens, don't you think we should make our government and leaders accountable and ask tough questions? And unfortunately, this regime is trying their best to hide, and they are running like any paternalistic state. So I think Mr. Gandhi and his campaign and his ideas are right. They are largely about the voice of people, and we don't operate from top to bottom. Bharat Jodo Yatra was an attempt to listen to the voices of people. It was an attempt to see what anxieties or issues young Indians are facing and to talk about those issues. And eventually, 24, we were just there. And it was because of, and I'll give you examples of Uttar Pradesh, by the way. 16 seats we lost by the local administration's pressure. In my own constituency, light was cut at the last moment of counting. So if 20 odd more seats, and there would be some other person as Prime Minister and not Mr. Modi. So I don't think our campaign is failing.
So you say the message is not reaching the targeted audience. The medium is under control of somebody. Okay. Now before coming to Ms. Vineeta, I'll ask one more question to Mr. Vundru. Today, many people see Gandhiji as an answer to India's path forward, his ideology, his approach, etc. While the others look to Ambedkar. The debate over who is right has become serious, and some even argue that both are right. The question is then, how can these two truths be brought together into a single path for India's future?
Thank you. In fact, some time ago, the Outlook magazine ran a voting campaign as to who was the most important Indian after Gandhi. In fact, people voted and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was considered by the voters in that poll that after Gandhi, Ambedkar was the most important person. So while writing a piece for that issue, I said, what Gandhi left, Ambedkar took it over. Broadly, the idea of both of them looking towards India or a new nation that is being born was similar, but the way Ambedkar wanted to do it was different, because Ambedkar felt that it has to be done very fast, very quickly. He didn't have that patience. He was young. And Gandhi was of his own pace. They had a difference in opinion. When we talk about, the abolition of untouchability and the way criminalizing the practice of untouchability. So you see Untouchability Offences Act, the PCR Act 1976, SC/ST Atrocities Act 1989, amended in 2016, a bunch of... So what Ambedkar brings in the idea of Gandhi is the constitutional path to it. Because Gandhi was not actually looking at the constitution. I'm bringing the constitution again. So the Gandhian ideology even today pervades through various means. When we are talking about any ideology, we cannot take their individual lives as a path and talk about that as an ideology. Apart from what their lives spoke, they had a broader vision for this country. This is what I feel, that the Gandhian and Ambedkarite ideologies, again, there is a confluence over that. But again, the path is constitution. When Ambedkar gave that provision in the constitution to bring in local self-government, which of course Gram Swaraj was the idea of Gandhi. So, but it took a lot of time, and it is up the Rajiv Gandhi's government, which brought in the Panchayati Raj systems or the local self-government. So that provisions were always left open. So now as we go ahead and different conflicting ideologies come in, Gandhian and Ambedkar's ideology are going together. But when you look at their life stories, they fought bitterly on certain issues. So some people try to accentuate those times and try to play upon them, which as we go ahead after 75 years of our country, they don't come into a real picture now. What we are looking at is as a future, as a country, where we strive for equality. That is a prime point which I'd like to make. Thank you.
Now my question is to Ms. Vineeta. It's about Viksit Bharat goal and its socialist and social justice aspect, I think. The goal of the Union government is Viksit Bharat. It developed India in 2047. However, India faces a lot of social conflicts such as CAA, SAR, etc. The feeling of alienation is increasing among minorities, and many protests have taken place already. How can these development goals be realized without gaining the trust of all sections of the society? I mean, including linguistic minorities, religious minorities, and so on. Isn't an integrated India as important as a developed India? is in that the true spirit of India? Yeah.
Right. So your question itself is, Viksit Bharat and integrated Bharat go together. So it's not one at the cost of the other. And speaking of Viksit Bharat and inclusivity, I think never before has a governance been so inclusive as it is today, despite all the false narratives and despite all the, myth that is floating around about exclusivity. Because if you see our Viksit Bharat goal, it is about youth, Annadata, Garib and Mahila. That is the youth, the farmers, the poor and the women. It's giving equal rights to all of them to empower all of these sections of societies. And it's across caste, creed, religion and gender. So where is the exclusivity that we are talking about? See, inclusivity is not just in through communication mediums or through, Mohabbat Ka Dukaan. It is not, inclusivity is not just by display. It is by action. It is by ethical delivery. You see our last, 12 years of performance under this government. Never before has India been so robust and so strong as it has been today. So if you don't want to believe figures, we are the fastest growing, fourth largest. I know all of you all have heard about it. It's not rhetoric. It is the absolute fact. It's the absolute truth. So how have we achieved this? We cannot achieve it at the cost of, not avoiding large sections of the population. Our entire philosophy of this government is Antyodaya. Antyodaya is what? Saturation of Grama Panchayats. Through giving them universal basic service coverage, universal coverage of basic services to all the Grama Panchayats, to all the people living in every village, in every city, in every small mohalla of this country. So where is the exclusivity? Where is the divisivity? So now when we talk of losing opposition, it is, you have to be humble in the face of defeat. Now, when there was a particular party ruling for so many years, was there electoral malfunctioning then? Were they winning elections after elections through malfunctioning? So whenever there is a phase, there is a cycle in democracy, and you can never mistrust the processes of our country. The electoral process of the country is the foundation of democracy, and you cannot question democracy ever in this country. As our constitutional expert has said, that the constitution holds true, across time, across the phases of governance. So therefore, any party that loses should never point fingers at the electoral processes of the country, and it's like a bad workman blaming the tools. So when you talk of transparency, now Viksit Bharat is also about transparency. We know digitalization, how it has transformed our lives. The audience, each one of you can vouch for how digitalization is. I don't know how many of you are in this generation where you've been born with a mobile phone in your hand. So you don't know the times where before, there were these hoarding of notes, and there was this entire, kind of information asymmetry, which is why we couldn't even calculate the workforce. We couldn't, give a quantity to, or we couldn't quantify the economic output of several of the workers that were outside of the formal economy, because we did not have access to how much they earn. And he talked of data. Data is measurable today. Why? Because of digitalization, because the platforms that, this government has given, digital platforms. So, dashboards and all of that is coming in the ministry is something that's seen only over the last 12 years. So we have honest, transparent data coming out in the open to the, country and to the world to see. Now, Viksit Bharat goals is definitely about integration, and more importantly, it is about giving basic social, economic and digital amenities to the last mile and to every citizen of this country. So what more can you ask for about inclusivity than this?
Okay. I think time is up to...
Cissy, can I respond to just one line?
This is not a political... Don't turn this into a political discussion.
This is not a political discussion.
Yes.
I'm saying...
I had to retort because
this is not a polemic. This is just...
So just tell me, should I or should I not? Should I go ahead with...
Sorry, I don't want to make this as a political debate. Sorry. Now the session is open to audience. If you have more questions, please ask our panelists. Please ask the questions Please make the questions be short and try to avoid making lengthy opinions, please.
So my question to Mr. Yadav is, why is Congress not doing a ground level yatra, not kind of a yatra, but I understand the problems that you mentioned, but why we are not responding to this on the ground? When the MJNREGA rules were done or any other contentions rules were brought out, it's just a one-day padayatra being held by either Rahul Gandhi or Priyanka Gandhi to some part of Delhi. Bharat Joda was a very different one, but otherwise, why not do something radical like what Mahatma Gandhi had done during the time of independence? I think these times need something, that kind of radical measures. And I have something for Vineeta, ma'am. But you told about an inclusive India, but every day we see news about breaking of mosques or churches or temples everywhere, and about and you told we should not question the basic foundation of elections. That's the most basic foundation of in a democracy. Don't you think it's the most important right that we should question everything that's happening? No, nothing should be taken as it is, because nobody should be trusted. Shouldn't we all should be critical thinkers, thinking everything that happening in the society.
Okay, your point is clear. Please.
Thank you so much. And I think you're right that we must do something radical as the Congress party. And we have to correct all the fault lines within the party. So there are multiple things which we are doing. The first one being the Sangathan Srijan Abhiyan. Knowing that our organization is weak, we have to work on it. We are trying to strengthen our booth level organization, our district level organizations. And regarding Manrega, there is a month-long campaign going on, which is called Manrega Bachao Sangram. All over the country, we have local yatras. We are reaching out to all the Manrega workers, and I can't stop myself from saying this, but in this Viksit Bharat, right-based work, I think is not part of the Viksit Bharat, where our workers, our poor people are dying of contaminated water. I am from Delhi. I have to breathe toxic air. I hear news of paper leaks, high unemployment. People are waiting for one exam, teaching exam for 5 years. Every time date postponed. I don't know what Viksit Bharat, and we will resist that. We are fighting for it. And there will be more yatras, brother. There will be more yatras. Thank you.
Yeah, so regarding the critique, we are never against critique. We are never against voices against the government. So I did not say that you cannot raise your voice. I'm saying that you cannot blame a particular system without having evidence about it. And so I said, electoral processes in the country are something which is very sacrosanct. I'm not saying that we cannot question it if you really find evidence to the contrary. But I am not discouraging debate, or I'm not saying that this government discourages debate or arguments among the youth. It's only through deliberation and discussions that we have policies that are made in wherever they are made in Delhi and in the particular and in different states. So it's through stakeholder consultation, it is through debates, it is through deliberations that different policies and different programs are made and evolve from time to time. So we are never against critique, but the answer to critique is not just hollow arguments, but it is about delivery again. It is about proving that on the ground to do things positively and productively for the people, which is again Viksit Bharat. How much ever the critics there may be naysayers against Viksit Bharat, but Viksit Bharat 2047 is something that a pathway which has been accredited and verified not just by this government, but by neutral independent agencies as well, which are revered across the globe.
My question is to Mr. Yadav. Rahul Gandhi has taken up many issues, including vote chori, and asked the masses to rise against the present government in Bangladesh style overthrow and all that. But the masses has not taken up the issue so far. They have been very calm. What could be the reason?
So I think we have done an assessment of this, and the first thing which we realize is that our message has not reached to the masses. That is our first assessment that we have failed to deliver our message to the last mile. And as I said previously also, that we see masses support largely in terms of electoral victories, unfortunately. But these victories are based on multiple other things, and not just campaign, not just raising voice. It's also about how we mobilize voters to the booth. And that's our fault line. There we lack. It's not, and I think our data shows that Rahul Gandhi's popularity has increased, support has increased. He's extremely popular in the younger generation, Gen Zs, and we have seen rise in all the social media platforms in his support, in his fan base. But when it comes to electoral victories, unfortunately, we have not delivered. But sir, in time we will, and hopefully the next election will be ours. Thank you.
So I have two questions. One is for Vundru sir, another one is from Vineeta ma'am. So when you said that Nehruvian socialism and Ambedkar's ideology kind of confluenced while making of the constitution, I understand that because they were drafting a constitution, they have to come to a consensus. But traditionally, and correct me if I'm wrong, weren't their ideologies very different? Because when you're talking about a nation, and if I can remember correctly while reading Annihilation of Caste, Ambedkar did not even consider India a nation per se because it was segregated into different castes which do not intermingle. And I think Nehru was not of the same opinion. I'm not really sure, but I want to know your opinion on that. And to Vineeta ma'am, when you are talking about the government being one of the most inclusive governments we have of late, I would not only look at the union government, which is also BJP, but I would also look at the state governments, where a lot of states have BJP governments in place. And to take up a very recent example, in Assam, Hemant Biswa Sarma has been spewing a very vitriolic rhetoric against Bengali Muslims in Assam, who he's calling derogatorily Mia, and talking about the fact that they should go vote in Bangladesh, not in Assam. If they have demand 5 rupees for rickshaw, you should pay them 4 rupees, and we want to cause general trouble to them during the SIR process. How the union government has not corrected him, BJP as a party has not responded to the allegations, Supreme Court has not taken suo motu cognizance of this hate speech. How do you respond to that by saying that this government is very inclusive in nature?
Very interesting question. In fact, when we are talking about Nehruvian ideology pre-independence, I consider that there is nothing like a Nehruvian ideology before that. He was a disciple of Gandhi. The overall Gandhian ideology movement, he was a follower of that. He was a young man, he was vibrant with ideas, more Western democratic ideas. That was one positive thing about him. When Gandhi and Ambedkar were fighting in Pune over the Pune Pact and the electoral system, you know where was Nehru? Nehru was in jail in Dehradun. So he didn't know what was happening all. He only sent a telegram to Gandhi. He said, "Oh, you magician, I'm happy that you have, broken the fast." So the Nehruvian ideology, as I said earlier, which was a very interesting, pointer by Cissy Jacobji, that his ideology developed during the constitution formation. He had crystal clear ideas because you see him as a pure Gandhian follower, as one of the important members of the Congress party at that time. But his ideas which were formed at that time were very positive. That is where the Western democratic ideas or the democracy, democratic socialism, how we could bring an imprint on the preamble, objectives, resolution. This is where the confluence came. It went on well because that is where they met and they agreed upon. Yeah, thank you.
So, on one particular leader's comments, I would not want to talk about it, but one swallow doesn't make a summer. But we need to actually look at, as I said before, look at the benefits, look at the last mile delivery of services. That's how we are inclusive, through actions, not by rhetoric or not by reaction to, just by through speeches. Now, we're talking about CAA and the SIR. Yes, it's a highly contentious, process that has been, done in this country. But But this is a course correction. This is about, again, as you said, data. Now, data is very important. There were times when, before the Sustainable Development Goals came in, there was Millennium Development Goals. And during the Millennium Development Goals, I was working in the ministry at that time, and there were many components which were said, no data available, no data available. So we cannot even, consider India in any of these goals because data is not available. Today, that's not the case. We are leading in the SDG goals. We are going towards Viksit Bharat is about 50% of our energies through non-fossil fuel sources. So why don't you look at all of those developmental initiatives, those productive, positive developmental initiatives, which is actually inclusive governance. Now about BJP taking action against particular leaders. See, there is something called Shreyas versus Prayas, like you must have read the economic survey. There is short-term, results and there is long-term. So BJP is a party, is a long-term. It has long-term vision. It has long-term, actions. And also at the same time, there are also very sudden actions taken where we have people from the grassroots like Draupadi Murmuji has come up from a, most backward community, and she has been made the president of India. What more inclusivity do you want? You cannot just pinpoint one leader, his comments, and pin that against the entire narrative or entire process that India has stitched up for the last 12 years. There will be corrective action if there is required to be. And both of these electoral, the processes of CAA and SIR are all data correction processes, and it's not against any particular community. It will be as inclusive as it is possible to be.
One more question.
So I have a question.
One more.
So I have a question. Like Vineeta ma'am talked about the inclusiveness, and Raja Sara and Mritunjay talked about the Nehruvian socialism and Ambedkarite socialism. So I'll come to the question in the context of Kerala. So when we formed as a state in 1956, we were an agrarian feudal society where a lot of caste discrimination, social injustice exist. But now we see today, like we are one of the best, better living condition state in India out of all 28 states. So I have a question, like, don't you see like both Nehruvian socialism and Ambedkarites are diluting the actual socialist movement in India? And also like Saffron politics is also bringing like socialism in their tagline just to dilute the actual socialism, considering the context of Kerala. So we have removed all this like social injustice and caste discrimination.
First of all, I should congratulate Kerala on at least achieving what it envisaged in 1956. Coming back to the point of diluting socialism, all I can say is, as I said it previously, that one party is not one voice. There are multiple voices, and the party like Congress Party is a democratic platform where many progressive ideas converge. There were times when you rightly said, there were times to dilute socialism and social values. But voices from the Congress Party resisted that and took positions, and the party leadership had to cede to their demands and course correct the path. Coming back to present times, I think this is the time where the Congress Party is towing the line of true socialist ideology, and we are echoing the real principles of social justice, socialist politics, and hopefully, given the opportunity, we will deliver on that also. Thank you.
One more question before winding up. We'll take one more question. Okay.
This is for Vineeta ma'am. So ma'am, you said that BJP is being transparent very much, but we still don't know what's the death toll in the COVID situation. Secondly, there was a PM Cares Fund, which the office said that it's not under the ambit of audit, but it is it was collected on the name of PM only. And still there has been no answers on that, like how much money came or how, whatever there was. Thirdly, in the electoral bonds, around 4,002 crores was not disclosed. Out of the 16,518 crore, 4,002 crore wasn't disclosed. Where did it go?
Excuse
Can I
me,
get an
come to
answer
the
for that?
question, please? Wait, time is running out. Please come to the question.
So I'm saying that you are saying that it's being very, very transparent, but I can see that it's not being transparent at all.
So as far as the COVID is concerned, during the COVID times, there has been no other country which has lived and has sustained this entire global pandemic as robustly as we did during the COVID. And you can also see the kind of efforts that we took not only to produce vaccines in our country, but also to support our neighboring countries through vaccine support. And as far as the toll and the death rates are concerned, it was all there in the public domain. And whatever you want to dig out, things against small components of the entire governance systems, there will be black holes everywhere if you want to dig it out. PM Care Fund is also a publicly available data. And PM Care Fund is something that, through the corporate social responsibility also, many companies, when they cannot, spend their own backyard, then they contribute to the PM Care Fund. That is the failure of the private companies who were not able to utilize their corporate social welfare fund. And in the end of the year, they just conveniently put it into the PM Care Fund, which we can be very assured of that it goes into the development of the nation and nothing else, because there is no first family here in this party to cater to. So this entire money is going to national development. You can be well assured of that. I can very strongly state that in this forum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for the panel, and thank you for being very inquisitive audience. Thanks a lot.